Ready? Awesome. Full house. Yes. A lovely group of people. We are going to have so much fun tonight. So welcome and thank you. I promise we're gonna have fun. Welcome and thank you so much for taking some time out this evening to hang out with us and go through some nerdy data, but also do some fun stuff and the things that we have to do. So before I do that, I'm going to ask for 2 separate rounds of applause for different reasons. So it is December. The board is concluding its work for the year shortly, and which means that we're going to have some new board members next year. But before that happens, what I want to do is I want to make sure that we publicly recognize those who are rolling off of the board. So Pat Hughes, wave your hand. Pat. And Jody to my right. So Pat has done yeoman's work on attempting to keep me in line this year, which I am very grateful for. He has worked tirelessly. The 3 of us all got elected together. It has been an absolute pleasure and a joy, and I just can't overstate that. It's not possible to serve with them, and I personally owe them a debt of gratitude. The board owes them a debt of gratitude, and Moss Creek owes them a debt of gratitude because they have worked absolutely tirelessly. And Jody, this is Jody's baby tonight. The member survey, which is basically a new process that she worked very, very hard to put in place and has been super helpful, not only to the current board and past boards, but they're going to be helpful to future boards for years to come. And we very greatly appreciate that. So round of applause for those guys. Okay, next up, Susanna Johnson.
Oh,
So speaking of absolutely tireless work, Susanna has filled in just absolutely magnificently throughout the course of the year. And I think I can speak for all of us when I said we appreciate it to no end. And it's been absolutely fantastic working with you over this year. And we greatly, greatly appreciate it.
thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so what are we actually doing here tonight? And my phone turned itself off, so I don't have the agenda, but the agenda. So what we're gonna do. Number 1, we are going to introduce Scott, which apparently we don't really even need to do because is a prolific handshaker. Absolutely prolific. And I think I can also speak for all of us when I say that that's something that is very, very greatly appreciated and something that we've desperately needed, and it's absolutely fantastic to see. And I will also say it's just a pleasure and a joy to have him with us and on the Moss Creek team. And it's a privilege to have you in the Low Country, and we thank you for the huge move that we've made across the country, or are making across the country. And he's going to serve Moss Creek very, very well. Even just the things we've already talked about, Scott's an absolute rock star, and you're going to all start to see that in the member experience for sure. So greatly appreciate that. So we're going to introduce that. All right, so we're going to do the unnecessary introduction of Scott. He's going to speak in just a second. And then what we're going to do is going to turn it over to Jody. Jody's going to introduce the research. She's going to introduce Mike. Mike, raise your hand, wave. Mike is going to give us his yearly presentation on the data and the survey results. And then we are going to do Q&A. So you should all have cards on your seats, just like the other town halls that we do. Write down your question, write down your name, write down your address. Pass it to one of the members of the team here. Wave your hands.
We got Tom and Katie and Mike.
Tom, Katie, Mike.
Not Mike, Tom, Katie, Jim.
I'm not wearing my contacts. Pass it to one of the members of the staff, and they'll get the questions to us, and then we'll answer them in an orderly as fashion as possible at the end of the meeting. So without further ado, Scott.
The faces are becoming a little more familiar, and I appreciate that, and I've told people the names will come. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Scott Julian. Very excited to be back in the South. A lot of people have said, oh, you're from California, I wanna clear that up right now. Actually not from California. My wife Becky and I lived in Atlanta for 8 years, and we ran a club called Cherokee Town Country Club, which is a very special club. Loved the South. 36 years ago, I asked her to marry me on Hilton Head Island. And she said yes. And it's still working. She said I'm almost straight. And so we had vacation down here in the Low Country and kind of fell in love with it. It's very different than it was 36 years ago. But change is inevitable. Hudson's was the same. And so we had always kind of had our finger on South Carolina. We have 2 boys that are living their best lives up in the Pacific Northwest, and they really don't have a lot of time for us. So we decided we could, we had one last chance to do something great, one last chance to have a great adventure. And when Moss Creek opened, it just looked like something that would really fit, I think, what I am hoping to accomplish. So here we are back in the South. Cleared up the California rumor. We moved to California after we had empty nested up in the Northwest. And if you've lived in the Northwest and you are in rain for 5 months a year, you eventually run someplace sunny, and we went someplace where there's no seasons, and that's changing for us now. So I'll really kind of end here by saying that I'm not gonna be hard to find. I'm gonna kind of find a rhythm that you are gonna fall into, knowing that you're gonna see me on Friday nights and Saturdays and Sundays at different times. I'm kind of a weekend loaded manager. We have a rock star in Susanna, and so I can only imagine, Mondays and Tuesdays and different days that she has been running the place without me anyways. So my hope is that I'm not someone hard to find, and that we can just get to know each other. And my plan really for the next 30 days is to ask a lot of questions and listen a lot. And so I think I've gotten to know a few of you, but not enough of you. So I would really encourage you, just engage me when you see me, and remind me of your names for just a little bit. And just give me a chance to get to know you a little bit. And hopefully, with Susanna doing the job she did here, having a partner in crime, I can imagine that we can just be amazing at this club. So I appreciate you.
Well, good late afternoon, early evening, everybody. I'm gonna kick this off a little bit by talking about why we even do this. And I'm gonna back up a bit, which is 3 years ago, this is our 3rd year in a row that we've done this survey. But prior to that, we were on an every 3-year schedule, which there's no question that that's a really long time. We've already had a beginning of a discussion saying that even 1 year is a long time, given the age that we're all living in, with instant information and instant feedback and thumbs up and thumbs down and thumbs sideways. So we may be changing this up a little bit, but we'll see how that goes. One of the other reasons why we may change this up, and this is just one of the first stats that I'll give you, is one of the things that we learned this year is we are now up to 33% of us who have lived in Moss Creek for less than 5 years. Exactly the reaction, when we see these kind of stats, which tells us a lot of things. Things that our newer members bring different kinds of experiences here that can help enhance all of our time here at Moss Creek. But by the same token, they in and of themselves have different expectations of us. Now, that's not to make any kind of judgment against the fact that when we look at the 33% that have lived here for less than 5 years, that increases to 56% of people that have lived here for less than 11 years. So Mike's going to go into this in more detail relative to broad-based attitudes and feelings of satisfaction, areas for improvement, and so forth. But one of the beauties, I guess, or dangers of great research is the infinite ways that we can slice and dice it. So we can begin to look at people, members, us, based on different sets of preferences. And how do we pinpoint those kinds of preferences for what we might want to be doing more of or less of, that will add to the overall member experience. So that's what this is all about. And as I said before, we've moved year to year. We may be moving even to a more narrow frequency to give us more data in real-time basis. So that's why we do this. I will also tell you that this year we had the highest percentage of completed return responses that we've had in the 3 years that we've been doing it. My friend over here is shaking her head because she also comes from stats and research, Linnea. And I know you're gonna be bowled over when I tell you that 65% of the people who logged into the survey and the entire membership was done. So we had 65% logged in and finished the whole thing. Thank you, everybody for doing that. Last year, we had 55%. So there you go. So this is the only way we're ever gonna get this kind of data. We're also, just to give you a little framework, Mike, you told me that the average within this kind of club community research set is a 50 to 60% return. So stating the obvious, we are heavily involved with what is going on here in Moss Creek. And we have no problem, whether it's in an annual survey or a daily phone call or email to these people to my left, right? And not me anymore, of letting us know what we're thinking at any point in time. I say good for us and keep that up. Okay, so I gave you a little bit of stats to set this up. I'll give you a little bit more. 17% of us are 59 years old or younger. That's a growing number year to year. 59 or younger. 33% are 75 or older. This, I think, is kind of reflective broadly of the population at large in the country, which also is kind of an interesting piece of information to keep in mind. We may feel like we're in a bubble, but we're kind of representative of what's going on in the world and the country today, which is also something else to keep in mind. Another thing, and most likely you've seen this with your own eyes or experienced it one way or another. Almost 13% of us have children younger than 25 years old living at home. We can break that down further by, that particular age. The reason why we cut it at younger than 25 or basically 24 and younger is because that's how we define membership. So if you're younger than 24 and you're living at home with your parents and so forth, you're included in that family membership. But if anybody really wants to know how many 6-year-olds there are here, we can find out for you. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this over to Mike because it's a lot more interesting when he talks about this. But again, I just want to reiterate why we even do this. And it tells us what we should keep on doing, what's working. It also tells us maybe what we should be doing less of. And it also tells us maybe what we should be doing more of. So it's useful. I will also say that we had almost 300 pages of comments. We read them. Everybody's read them. There are some trends that showed up in the comments, but those are the comments. Those represent individual thoughts, even though there are trends and they were pretty easy to pick out and see. A lot of them kind of jumped up. Can I say prime rib on Fridays? Things like that. And those are also taken seriously and heavily into account as planning continues. And then the last thing is we did change the time of the survey. Some of you will remember that we used to do this in the early part of the year, January, February, March-ish, so that we had information available to report at the member meeting in April. It was great for the member meeting, but it wasn't all that helpful for managers and programming people to use in their annual planning because it was too early in the year and budgets had been set, planning had been set, goals had been set. So that's another reason why we changed it to this time of year. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Mike and let's hear more about what we all think about our home.
Right, good afternoon, evening, everybody. It's really exciting to be back. I'll tell you, if you remember last time I was here, you had not done this project in the clubhouse. So things were starting to get piled up over there. We were in a completely different room. So the second I opened the door, I was hit with the beauty of new, fresh smell of paint and carpet. And I thought how wonderful this is. As Jody said, we've been doing this for 3 years now. So I've kind of come along the journey of a lot of great improvements and things you've done over the last couple of years, and truly it commends you for the investment and the time you put into it, because it shows in the overall survey results and truly validates the investment and time that you put into it. It's been fun to kind of watch. So the first time we did this, it was in the middle of COVID or at the beginning of it. So I remember some of the comments saying, I moved in and I hadn't even met anybody on my street yet. And so we went from isolation all the way to this room being full, and it's like a Sunday mass where you're trying to squeeze people in the pews and get everybody in there, so. Or say Christmas mass. Amen. Rightfully, that's the only one to go to now. So Mike Barrett, I'm from Club Benchmarking. We're a data analytics company based out of Boston. It's great to see you in kind of jackets. It snowed up north today. I came from Florida. I was doing focus groups down south, but it's snowing up there and everybody's a little chilly down here, so it's a good reminder of that. We are a nationally recognized company. I work with the majority of clubs in this area doing surveys. I got a club on island that I'm sending out their member survey tomorrow, and I got another one next month that I'm going out. So we're pretty well recognized. If you haven't been in one of our presentations, looking forward to some of your comments and questions later. What's great is Jody did the first third of my presentation already, so I didn't spend too much time on these slides, and I got a little timer going, but ultimately, as she said, we reiterate the purpose of doing these. It's a member experience driven community, right? The reason you live here is for that experience that goes beyond just living somewhere offsite. And so there's only one way to document that truly, as she said, to get such a large population is through surveys. And so we want to be able to do that. We also want accountability on both parties, both your side and our side, so that we can start to measure and see, are we making and moving the needle going forward, which we have, and you'll see that in the scores. Also, with the new transition of management too, what a great opportunity to come in, and not to put words in his mouth, but great opportunity to come in and have all this feedback and say, okay, now let's see as we go forward with new changes, if there are any, did that work? Do we need to pivot? Anything like that. So we love it. We think it's one of the best things that you can possibly do to really start to benchmark going forward. The other thing is, we call it bottoms up approach, right? We want to drive all of our decisions based off your perspectives, right? We don't want to put in bocce just because like more on the president's an avid bocce player. We don't need any more pet projects. We want a community that's cultivated and driven by what you all want. And so it's important to be able to do this. From this, we've learned a lot. As she said, we've seen steady improvement year over year from whether it's things that the management team is doing and shifting the capital investments you're making, and just as we grow as a culture and new people coming in. So it's been great, the overwhelming support that we've had for this process. And as she said, I can't thank you enough for being a part of it. What you see here is the overall response. I'd like to mention that, so with the first time we actually did it was 2021, and so the years prior to that was a different company. The years prior to that was a different company, so when you started working with Club Benchmarking, we saw a pretty significant increase. I'd like to just kind of throw that out there. But during 2021, that was that first year of COVID, right? Everybody was on their computers and home all the time, and so we expected a pretty good response that year. Last year, still a great response. As she said, our average is at 56%. You were at 55. And then this year we jumped up to about 65% of people that replied. So that's incredible, right? And it's an extensive survey, we'll be honest, right? It's a timely one because you offer so many great things. So how do we leave out any one area without wanting to react to that? So truly, thank you for taking the time and being a part of that. It's incredibly important. So as she said, here's some of the demographics that we're looking at, and we've seen a little bit of shifts in some of it. We wanted to focus on some of the difference of people coming in the community. You see that that's at 11 or that 33% that she mentioned, less than 5 years. we are seeing a huge increase of more people joining clubs. You've seen it, right? 50% of clubs across the industry, I'll say clubs, have a wait list. The communities are the same, right? We see within communities limited homes that are for sale because people don't want to leave, right? They love it where they're at. And you see that here within Moss Creek as well. Even though you've seen about a third of your homes kind of turn over, if you will, over the last 5 years, we're seeing people less likely to leave their communities. The other things too, what we're looking at about general work status, right, with the ease of working from home, people are staying involved, and if they're on boards, if they're on nonprofit, things like that. So we're seeing people's, sorry, this is a new laser for me. I don't want to, sorry, I'm just gonna keep that down so I don't get anybody in the eye and have a lawsuit. So we're seeing that shift of people staying involved, whether that's on island, in the community from there. So as Jody said, we'll look at all these differences and results. So if we want to look at any pockets or segments of the demographics, we can. It's all, again, confidential and completely anonymous, and we only focus on kind of myopic little segments that you see on that screen. Did something there.
It's off now.
It's off.
You mind hitting it? Thank you. There we go. So there's 3 myopic scores that we look at in your survey. One is overall satisfaction. On the next slide, we'll talk about overall attachment. And the last one is member and owner loyalty that we see there. So what you see is quick bit of caution or quick little housekeeping. Everything on the survey, if you remember, was on a 1 to 7 scale. 7 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. As a participant, you saw strongly agree to strongly disagree, extremely satisfied to extremely dissatisfied. And we use that for all of our surveys. You can kind of see that on that right side of the screen, that breakout. We also show averages, which is the numbers on the left for a data nerd like I am, and this is the nerdy portion of the evening, as he said. Those mean something, but we also show percentages as well. And then we can show industry benchmarks as some comparatives. As I said, we work with the majority of clubs in this area too. So you can see here, we stayed relatively similar to these overall satisfaction scores. We're going to talk about from a little bit more high level where some of the improvements and opportunities are. You will get that full written report that you normally do that will be coming and be published with a little bit deeper information and robust there. But seeing that it's only about it's a 0.04 difference from last year, that's not a statistically different score, to be frank. So we stayed relatively similar in this. And again, we're going to talk about some of the things that impacted that. What we want to do is we want to drive the percentage of people that hit strongly agree to over 35%. That's a best in class, right? We want to get the score over 6, and we're headed in that direction. And you're going to see that in the scores that you have here. And then we also say you want less than 5% giving a negative score that somewhat disagree strongly, and you're right around 6% there. So we're real close to hitting what we would consider some best of class scores. And again, you can see that we've been improving this year over year. Next is attachment. So we are one of the predominant companies, we're actually the only company that has an algorithm on member loyalty. Our CEO, Dr. Jim Butler, went to Iowa State and did his dissertation on determining member loyalty within clubs. He ran 2 gated communities down in Naples. One of them was arguably one of the best ones in Naples, I'll say, one into that geographic region for a number of years. And during that time, he was able to improve their overall experience by every year. And it was through his research and all the things that impact it. So these attachment questions come from his research. And this is something that we wanted to focus on. Your community, which you've all said tirelessly in the survey, is so important. The friendliness here, the weave of culture that you have here is incredible. And something that really comes through more than I see at other places. Truly, in many comment sections, you reference how great your fellow friends and neighbors, cohorts, however you want to mention them, how are important to the fabric here at Moss Creek. So a couple of things. Through this, we've been focusing on things, right? Moss Creek means a lot to me. We've improved that slightly every year. We see that I feel a strong sense of community, which is already a high score. We've kept that relatively similar, and we've improved that from 3 years ago since, again, that isolation COVID with that first year. And then Moss Creek creates opportunities for me to socialize with members. That's been a consistent improvement from there. That social programming is so incredibly important. And that's been something that's been a focal point for this club leadership, and really we see the results coming through on this. And so, this is something that I recommend we continue to monitor, because ultimately this is what keeps us growing that tenure, growing that excitement to be here, and then sharing and bringing all your friends down here to visit your community. So this is the Net Promoter Score. You probably heard this or taken this, Delta's a huge contributor to this. They love using this. I flew Delta up from Naples today. Enterprise is another one. I primarily rent from Enterprise. They are a big proponent of using this. So it's a loyalty-based question. It's created by Bain & Company up in Boston. Ultimately, what they did is they asked this question on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend X? And then they took survey responses from tens of thousands of surveys and found that they could group them together, right? People who answered negatively throughout the survey answer a 0 to 6. People who answered, somewhat on the fence, good, some not too good, not too great, would answer a 7 and 8. And people who are ecstatic throughout the survey answer a 9 and 10. So that's where you get those three groups, that red, purple, blue that you see on the screen. I can tell you every time I've looked at this, I can break down all your results by those three groups, and they are always statistically different no matter what, on every score. And I do this, I'm a nerd and I do this every day, and it still blows my mind. So this is something that we love. It goes beyond that attachment, right? It's that brand loyalty. When you see a car with like an Apple sticker on it, and nothing against that, but you're like, wow, that person put a sticker for their computer on their car, right? That's that sense of excitement around products or communities, whatever it may be. So you get your percentage by taking, or you get your score by taking the percentage of promoters and subtracting it by the percentage of detractors. So that's where you get that 55%. There's a little bit of decimal points there that I think are missing. We've been able to improve this score also year over year, which is incredible, right? It's a very hard metric to move, especially in times with increasing home prices or trying to bring people within the community, things like that. That we're seeing. So we're seeing, and then you can see that you're well above our industry average. This is a score that can be negative 100 or positive 100. I have a couple of clubs that are negative scores. Truly, one of them hosts a tour event, I kid you not, and they have a negative score. The members are less likely to promote that club than to promote it. Another one is down in Florida, on the east coast of Florida. It's supposed to be one of the most exclusive facilities out there, and they have unbelievable facilities, and their score is negative, right? And I tell you, and then I work with mom and pop score clubs in the hills of North Carolina, and their scores are immaculate, right? It's all about the purpose, the sense of culture, what we're doing for our members, and you can see that shine through on your scores here. And so this is another quick metric that we love asking about. Gotta speed it up a little bit. So we're gonna cover all the different areas pretty quickly. As I said, you're gonna get a more robust report that shows you the overall individual scores, how they've changed year over year. Essentially how these slides are shown is it shows the overall satisfaction for each area, and then I added some comments about the individual scores throughout. We saw a lot of great improvement throughout these results, and then we also saw some opportunities. First one, clubhouse dining. We did this survey, we facilitated soon after the clubhouse opened, and we could really see in the results, there were some growing pains, truly. Some of the things that we were trying to figure out here clearly came through, and then some of the biggest opportunities that you have from a score standpoint, and you'll see that in the report. And I think knowing that as it ages and you're learning all the nuances of that facility, you're only gonna see it get better over time. And you generally see that whenever you see new facilities being opened up. Everybody wants to be there, right? So it's hard to get in, and then it's packed, and everybody is wondering about what the food, you're trying to see what works with the new kitchen. So you generally see that when you open new facilities in communities like yours. But number one thing, focusing on menu variety and rotation. Food and beverage is the hardest one. I won't go down my spiel, but I've said the whole thing. I'm so passionate about clam chowder, so I won't eat Manhattan clam chowder, right? So, and that's just one soup, that's I guess my spiel. But so it's one of the hardest areas to generate satisfaction, because we all have different opinions. It's too salty, it's too sweet, it's whatever it is. So it is one of the lower rated areas generally in clubs, but there are some opportunities. On the flip side, the grill down the creek, great scores, huge improvement across the board. The service was up, speed of service, attentiveness. You saw through there, as you see on the screen. I mentioned that all the service related scores improved, and that was 2 years ago, one of your bigger areas, right? You wanted more out of that, and we see a reaction from that. Now there's still with the constraint around the facility, we still want more, right? We want more of that area because we're seeing the success of it. So that's a great win that I would say down at that facility that you have there. Next are the golf courses and then golf operations. So you see improvement with the golf course on the top, you got the north and south. You know, the improvements that you're doing, I know you have some capital improvements slated for one of the courses in the coming years, but already the work that we've been doing that you've done since the last 2 years when these scores were a little lower, we're seeing them go well beyond what are some of our industry average. You can see there, the north course, the tees, the greens, the fairways, the bunkers, those 4 scores increased by an average of 0.39, almost a half a point improvement there. Same thing, we started on the south course. The greens got a little lower rated on the south course, but we're seeing that the investment and the time that they're putting into the facilities, the course is improving. On the golf op side, we see a little bit of different story. There was a little bit of a dip, but really there's just more interaction that we want to get out of that. There's some scores around the outside operation staff of wanting that interaction, generally you see some scores around the merchandise, especially now we're seeing kind of the value proposition go down with, fees increasing and things like that, but those are the those are the opportunities in golf ops would be, a little bit more around the service element of things is what you were looking for. And then some dress code things came out of it as well. You generally hear comments around pace of play. I was out in Colorado last month and it was great. I was in an annual meeting like this and we brought up the need for pace of play, and a gentleman stood up and he goes, it's just as much as our responsibility as it is the clubs to encourage pace of play, right? If you're playing with a guest of yours that's a little slower or in your group, it's just as much of a responsibility, because God forbid you want someone from the team to come out and embarrass you or anything like that. So just be mindful of that. And then always taking the opportunity, repair your divots and ball marks, and take care of your investments. We like to blame everybody else, but often as an avid golfer, I gotta say it. So those are some of the opportunities there, if you don't mind. The next one, so racket sports. This is another area where we saw a little bit of mix of scores. So tennis courts, so overall improvement here. Most of the tennis section improved. The scores are ecstatic. It's great, right? Another area where you've seen that investment coming out to play. General things really just in the rackets area is maintenance and cleanliness in the surrounds area, both in the pickleball and the tennis. Blowing the leaves, things like that, making a little bit more beautification. Some people mention, why don't we keep moving on? Let's get a tennis pro shop. Let's, keep building this program because we're on a great North Star. And then pickleball's been so successful that we're seeing people start to get a little bit frustrated with how they can't even get pickleball court times when they want to. And we're seeing that, right? Pickleball's booming. And generally, the thing with tennis right now, or I guess racket sports in general, it needs heavy focus on expanding the program. In golf, and I've said this before, in golf, you can play a 5 handicap and a 20 handicap. You can play, gamble, compare strokes, do whatever you want, right? In tennis, if you're a 4.0 USDA rated versus a 2.0 USDA rated, 4 is gonna sweep you. It's not even gonna be fun, right? It's gonna be like serving practice for the 4.0. So that's why, but generally in most communities, racket sports are played by 20 to 30% of the membership. So you need to put a heavy emphasis on really trying to grow the program, get people excited to play and not feel too intimidated to go out there and kind of stink for a little bit and learn pickleball, stay out of the kitchen, all those fun little things. So not too dissimilar that we're seeing, but truly these are some great scores. We did not ask about pickleball in the last survey, so you won't see that on there. Thank you. Boswick Pool, so another area, you keep hearing me say things are improving, which is great. One of the biggest things to come out of Boswick is there's always been this current, or the pun intended, not kind of pun intended, but there's always been this underlying theme in the comments around rules adherence and kind of making sure we're monitoring whether it's our own grandchildren or other grandchildren. And that's one area that we've seen steady improvement and increasing year over year, and it's been a focal point from the leadership to say, hey, we're gonna start working with you on this, or not working with you, but we hear you, right? We want to start improving that, and we're seeing that all the scores increased by a 0.07. So again, this is another area. It's the second most used amenity here on property that we're really trying to bolster and improve there. The fitness center. I love saying that. I keep to get to say that these things keep improving. I know I sound like a broken record, but the fitness center overall, again, you increase your scores by 0.20 overall, the overall scores, and that covers variety of equipment, that covers availability of equipment, this cleanliness, the hours operation, the fitness programming classes. The fitness programming classes, like I just said with the pool, is another area where we wanted to focus on. We've heard that the last couple of years, more availability, more variety, and we've seen improvement year over year in trying to get access around when we do the scheduling, when we're offering certain classes and working with you. One of the things here, though, we're starting to hear is we want a bigger facility. We want to update it a little bit. We want to be able to do more with that. And you can see that fitness is one of the biggest trends we're seeing across our industry. Truly, people are living longer. I was at a community down in Naples 2 months ago now. I'm not kidding. They have 30 golfers over the age of 90 and they play regularly. How amazing is that, right? That's just people staying fit and making sure. So that's that idea of incorporating fitness into our lives and the blue zones, if you're familiar with that down south, with the heart healthy thing. So doing pretty well here. Again, those scores have increased year over year going forward. And it's exciting to say that. So then we have the marina here. No surprise, the wait list want to be able to get on, be able to get a wet slip if you're on that wait list and trying to reduce it. What's great is you have the plans in place, right? Just a waiting game at this time to be able to get to the point where you are expanding the marina and being able to take care of it. So that's one thing that won't go away until we accomplish that in the upcoming years. But the biggest thing that could be focused on is just general cleanliness and upkeep in that area, both in the wet slip area and the dry storage area, if you're one of the 12 to 8% that use those two areas of the club. So that would be the biggest takeaway from that area of the club. So community grounds and security. I got three more slides. This is the community grounds is one area where we did see a little bit of decrease. Some of the things that came out of this was overall condition of the landscaping throughout the community. There's some comments on the front gate. There was some comments about the picking up the, don't know if that's a hot topic or not, picking up the debris and everything and the frequency of that as you're all shaking your heads on it and keep talking about it. But so you can see that kind of coming out on the comments. I've said it before, we know from our research that your landscaping and the look of your community is truly one of the top 5 reasons people choose to purchase within a community. It's so incredibly important. And so as they drive through or even just looking at the gate, that really sets the stage for someone's perception if they've never been in Moss Creek. So that's incredibly important at any community you go to. And then also knowing that you live here, clearly you want, you choose to live here to be in such a beautiful setting and location. Your security got some of the best scores throughout the survey, top notch. I experienced it today driving through. The gentleman was so kind. I pulled up, he lifted the gate. I was like, do I just keep going? He was like, no, stop. I was like, okay. But he was just so friendly. You could see he was smiling. So, but great scores. You can see no more than 2% of people are dissatisfied with this area. The only one that came up is the, traffic and speed control, which I told me, she told the story last time I was here, how she put her car on cruise control for 27 miles an hour and someone flew by her and even did a little inappropriate gesture.
Wait.
They waited.
Told me I was number 1.
There you go. I have now told that story at every presentation like this going forward. So I told that story probably 14 to 20 times in the last year, which is awesome. I know 5 cents, we agreed upon that earlier. But yeah, so that's one thing that you generally hear it. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but it is oftentimes we love to blame the vendors. It's not always the vendors. Let's be honest. So that's just, again, accountability on both parties. Then we have management and the board of directors. These are also 2 areas where we saw improvement. Really, the only opportunities or negative things were some financial management type areas. People wondering about the overall spend or the fees going up, which we're feeling that across the industry with dues and fees going up. Most communities or clubs have been increasing their dues and fees by a tune of more than 5% for the last couple of years and plan to going forward. So we're seeing that, and you're feeling that as well. We're seeing that across all of my surveys. But you see, this is a great time with the comments coming through of, hey, you're going through a transition, new general manager coming into place, you get opening up the clubhouse, you have all these renovations going on. And so that appreciation is there. And you can see throughout the results that we are seeing that, but there's some little things like that around that kind of financial management come out of that area. And then last 2 slides, we love doing this. This is called a word cloud. So it takes the most used words, makes them the biggest bold. This is the first one. What are your top 3 suggestions that you would focus on? You can see that the clubhouse dining being the first one. We talked about that. That was your biggest opportunity. Knowing, that was some growing pains, I'll be honest, not to devalue the sentiment, but I'd love to see the scores even now, or maybe even 2 months from now. I'm sure they'd be well beyond what was there, but, and then we talked about some of the golf things that came out of the course. We also talked about, you see the menu, I referenced that, the fees, landscaping, so all things that I've kind of covered, you see them coming out of this, just this one comment section of what you suggest being the top three things. And then lastly, what do you like best about Moss Creek? You know, bold and clear, it's the nature, it's the beauty, the community, staff, security, friendliness, the people. So I love that, right? Those are some really core values that you all believe in is so important to this community and hold on to that. Generally, golf's the biggest thing that you see there, truly. And so to see that the focus really is on this property and this overall community for you all is so important. And I love seeing that. So I think I'll sit down and I take questions later. Is that, or do I take questions now?
Well, you all have questions, you have cards, scribble them out, or easier to raise hands.
Well, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question. My name is Claire Goddard. I've lived here since 2020. And my question is, since you do these surveys for other clubs, do you have statistics on how we compare to similar communities in our location? And is that shared with at least the board or management?
Yes, yes to both. So we do have that. And we have shared it with them. We haven't shared it with them for this one yet, but we haven't passed when we will plan to.
Can you just tell us how we compare roughly?
Yes. So I include some of them there, you know, you started that with the overall satisfaction, that was on it, so you're above that for the overall satisfaction, the net promoter score, you are above our industry average. You know, the golf course, you're above, going off the cuff, dining, I would say could you actually, disappeared, that's fine. Dining, I would say because of the clubhouse, you're a little lower right now, but the grill pulls you up. So that's something that's pretty specific to everything you're dealing with. The golf ops, even though we saw some decrease, those scores are still above our industry average, right? So I think golf would be like a 6.02, yours was a 6.25, if I remember that correctly.
Those will be in the report, correct?
I believe so. We actually, in the report, we focused on the year over year, but we can work with them to publish that.
Yeah, again, my question was about communities similar to, in this location.
Yeah.
Not,
So Claire, the only ones we would be able to compare would be other clients of theirs,
right.
which they
No, I
have a
understand.
couple. Yeah.
I understand, but he said they have clients on the
Yes.
island.
Yeah. I don't want anybody to think it's the whole 278 stretch.
So yeah, we can do that for, yeah.
I do have a question that came in through
So,
the webinar. The course, this is from Greg Saz. The course satisfaction delta seems low, given the improvements made to one course and not the other. Insights as to why that is the case, 0.02%.
I want to repeat the question.
Please.
so Greg said, the course satisfaction delta seems low, given the improvements made to one course and not the other. Any insights as to why that is the case? And he said 0.02% improvement. So with the core score that you saw on the slide, that was a summation of the 4 areas. So it was the average of the 4 areas. So greens, tees, bunkers, and cart paths. You saw that there was a bigger improvement with the north course, which is where you made the majority of your investments. In the south course, even though we did see improvement, the greens, as I said, did decrease a little bit. Now, I can't exactly tell you why there would be that big of a difference between the two of them. But
The south course, we just remade.
sorry,
Did not have the improvements and was rated better.
Correct.
I don't feel it's slide. I don't know off the top of my head.
Yes, that's what the slide said.
I can answer part of that because I did read the 300 pages of comments. A lot of that is driven by the firmness of the south grades.
Yeah.
And they're new.
And they're brand new, they're firm, that does not generally go over well with the motion. They will soften though, I promise. I'm not an agronomist, but they'll soften.
We can also wait for, if you write any other questions, I'll be here all night. Or come talk to me. Oh, you have some.
Well, yeah, not for you. I'll just, it's not really doesn't seem to be a question, but it's a comment and we'll share. So the comment is about our Christmas decorations out front. Sorry, you can't hear me, honestly. Okay, so it's more of a comment than a question. And it generally has to do with improving and increasing the visibility of our Christmas decorations, particularly the nice garland that we've just gotten. But the gatehouse apparently is very pretty and somebody's happy with it. Anybody else? Mr. Potter.
This is a small sample, but on your presentation, you say that there's a question on our menu, that's a problem. My question is, my friends say they're very happy with the food that we're getting from the club. It's a vast improvement, but they're very disappointed in the menu. They're so limited and nobody seems to do anything about it. What are the specific plans to expand the menu so that we can have a better choice?
Yeah. Give this man a mic.
I'll attempt to take that one. I've been here for 5 days, but I've actually heard that question before. You know, I will tell you, it's rare that we're able to find a silver bullet. It's something that we have to constantly be trying to do. There's some real themes, you know, there's just certain things members are looking for. They want a great steak, they want prime rib. We definitely don't want people to go hungry between 4 and 5 o'clock. We definitely would love to have a happy hour menu. So, just in my first week, I've noticed some things here that I think you'd call low hanging fruit and just some things that, we want to build our dining strategy around. And so instead of just doing kind of knee-jerk things, our team is actually talking about what is our strategy? You know, what is our promise to you that we, from a standpoint of timing, from a standpoint of offerings? And so we're actually on that right now, having those conversations. My hope is that when we get to January, now, let me go backwards for a second. We actually, one of our strategies is not to make people hungry between 4 and 5 o'clock. That's not a very good strategy. So we are actually trying to implement right away kind of a late afternoon menu. So if you're a golfer and you come in and you're hungry, we can feed you. We're looking at your, so our strategy currently is we want you to be hungry and we're killing it. We're gonna change that strategy. And eventually what I hope is that all of these things we talk about, we can kind of debate strategy, right? How many steaks do we want? What is our variety? And, you know, we want you to be able to say, I want you to come to Moss Creek because of this thing, right? So because I haven't been here a long time, I can't give you answers, but we're gonna implement some easier things right away. And then really when we come back on that January 10th, I hope that we have moved the dial in the right location and that our members can see that we are making an effort. The one thing I can promise you is, and my mentor taught me this, was, you know, I can never make everybody happy all the time, but my power lies in the fact that I can always try. And so we will continue to try and find something and satisfy lunch versus dinner. I think we'll get closer to where we want to get to.
I have a question that came in from Mr. Kessler, 23 Peninsula, and it's for you, Scott. Could you expand on your comments about your schedule? Did I understand that you will not be in office Monday, Tuesday? Jan, what are your top 3 priorities for Norwich?
Let me start with the schedule. So one of the things I learned is, you know, try not to make your members come looking for you. And so typically Mondays are pretty quiet. Now I'm always gonna have an audit committee meeting or a finance committee meeting or something on Monday, and I'm gonna come in for those things. Occasionally I'll take a day off on Monday and go play the golf course because I want to see the conditioning of the golf course as well. And play with the members. You know, I like to be around the club Fridays. I like to be around the club Saturdays. I like to be around the club on Sundays. It's a very different group. So I'm a club manager and I married a woman who never asked me if I'm coming home or if I'm taking a day off. And so the good news is I just want to be very visible to you all. What are my top 3 priorities? I think right now it's to keep the processes that I've had luck with just kind of in my back pocket. I want to learn the culture of your community. I want to bounce some things off of, Chris and board members and see how that fits your culture. My number one priority right now is just visibility. And the one thing that I want to promise you is this isn't week one priority. I'm a visible manager. You're going to see me in year 3, in year 4, in year 5, the way you're going to see me in week 1, week 2, week 3. So visibility is definitely a high priority. Food and beverage is a priority for me. You're gonna see me spending a lot of time in the clubhouse. Golf is a priority for me. So those are the things I'm really focused on. And the last thing I would say is getting to know you and hopefully you'll engage me. And I'm gonna keep my mouth shut. I'm gonna listen a lot and I'm gonna ask a lot of what I like to think are really smart questions because I hate dumb questions. So I think that's how I'm getting to Mr. Kessler's question. So thank you, Mr. Kessler.
I have another question. Does the survey ever take into account part-timers' experiences versus full-timers?
So we asked that in the survey, if you remember, when you are, when you spend your time here in the community or in the area. Typically, year-round residents generally rate things a little lower versus seasonal, seasonal owners and people who are coming down, right? If you're here for 4 months, it's all, it's fun, it's honeymoon, it's great to be here, you're trying to get as much in for X number of months, whereas some of that's year round, you generally go through the ebbs and flows of the season when maybe it's slower and we're doing less, we're open less or whatnot. So we do look at that, and often there's a pretty, not a big difference, but you generally see year round residents that are a little less satisfied in those. So we will, but I think I started, there's a large percentage of people here that are year round already, so, but we do look at both of them.
I have a question from Charlie Tooley. It seems we only talk positives here. Why don't we address some of the negatives that need to be addressed in our community?
Wow.
So Mr. Tooley, yeah, that's a good question. It is a good question, and I think I've shared with some of you, 4-year high school debate kid, and it is a good question, because our goal is to look at both sides of each argument, because there's validity in everything, right? So we don't hold on to our perception of what things are and not really listen to learn and seek validity in those kind of responses. So what Mr. Tooley doesn't see a lot of times is, I like to think I'm not really critical, I'm critiqueical. And everything we look at, we're critiquing. And what Mr. Tooley says has a lot of validity. Why don't we talk about it? I think what we really want to do is behind the scenes, we're identifying these things. We saw themes. It's prime rib and it's visibility and it's accountability. And those are the kind of things that we talk about all the time behind the scenes. And maybe that's something that we should report on so that you see a little bit behind the curtain of what we do. So I can tell you that from the board level, from our leadership team, we're always seeking these opportunities. So though you may not always see that, I think, please know it's happening. We clearly could do a better job communicating it, but we're very critiqueical of our performance, and will continue to be so. So I don't know if, I think the negative we saw in the survey, and we're on those things.
Plus, they'll be reported in the executive summary. You'll see some detail on those as well.
Mike, when you look at the results for Moss Creek versus all the other communities that you surveyed, what jumps out to you in terms of differences?
Yep, so the question was, when I look at the results of your survey for Moss Creek compared to other communities, whether like it or not, is there anything that jumps out to me? I would say there's as I mentioned, the community sense is probably the biggest thing that jumps out to me. But aside from that, there's a lot of commonality, to be honest. The things in the fitness center with group fitness classes, you generally see that come out. The challenges that generally are in food and beverage, you saw in there, the clubhouse dining is something that's pretty unique to you all at the moment, just because you just opened that new facility. Some of the golf course challenges that you see, elsewhere we're seeing more tee sheet compaction, tee time availability for communities that are overbuilt, right? And if they don't have ample number of golf courses. So that's probably something that we may see elsewhere. And then when you don't invest in the rackets facilities, generally those are ones that are kind of negative, but a lot of commonality that we're seeing that doesn't necessarily jump out here or elsewhere. That's not specific to events that are happening, like major events.
Wow, we got 3 more minutes. Laura, you can all be dismissed. Any other comments or questions that we can take at this point? Don't answer, bro.
We will be posting this to the website tomorrow. So if your neighbor missed it, be sure to tell them it'll be there. As soon as the executive summary is ready, we will send that out by email. It'll be posted on the website as well.
That's all the questions? Comments, thoughts? Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.